there, I'm Ailie and I'm really happy to be here with you as part of Paisley Book Festival. And I'm here to tell you a story. And my story today is a very old Scottish story. But before we start, I don't know what it's been like with you these last few days, but here it has been very, very cold. I'm hoping by the time you are watching this, it will be a little bit warmer. But just in case, let's warm up our hands and warm up our feet before we start. Hands are cold and feet are cold. Winter winds are blowing. Rub your hands, stamp your feet, and soon they will be glowing. Let's do it one more time. Hands are cold and feet are cold. Winter winds are blowing. Rub your hands, stamp your feet, and soon you will be glowing. Well, I've been very chilly the last few days, and I think outside in my garden some of the little creatures have been very chilly as well. Maybe out in my garden there was a wee little mousie who is feeling cold. Can you make a little mouse with your finger and make him run round and round and round? Runabout and Runabout runs the little mousie. Runabout and Runabout and in his little housey. Runabout and Runabout runs the little mousie. Runabout and Runabout and in his little housey. And there's another little creature about the same size as a mouse running about in my garden. A little wren, a little tiny bird. Ready? Round about and round about runs the little wren. Round about and then comes back again. Wrens do run about in the undergrowth quite a lot. Round about and round about runs the little wren. Round about and then comes back again. Well, a mouse is very small and a wren is very small, but my story today is about two creatures who are even smaller. It's about a flea and a louse. A flea and a louse, two very tiny creatures. Can you hold up a flea like this and a louse like this? They live together in a little house. The flea and the louse live together in a little house. One day, the flea and the louse, they were shaking their sheets. The flea and the louse were shaking their sheets, and the flea, she fell in the fire, and so the louse, she weeps. She cries. The flea and the louse were shaking the sheets, The flea, she fell, and she fell in the fire, and the louse, she weeps. Now, near the fire, on the hearth, was the porridge pot. And when the pot heard the louse crying, the pot said, "Louse, louse, why do you weep?" The flea and I were shaking our sheets. The flea, she fell, and she fell in the fire, so what can I do but weep? Said the louse. Well, the pot said, "If you are crying, I will stir." And the pot began to stir. It stirred, and it stirred, and it stirred, and it stirred. And the louse, she wept, she cried. Well, on the mantelpiece was the tea caddy, a tin full of tea. And the tea caddy saw the pot stirring and said, "Pot, pot, why do you stir?" "Well," said the pot, "the flea and the louse were shaking their sheets. The flea, she fell in the fire. The louse, she weeps, and I stir." "In that case," said the tea caddy, "I will shake." And so the tea caddy shook, and the pot, it stirred, and the louse, she wept. Now, on the table in that room, there was a bag full of pegs. A bag of pegs. And the bag of pegs saw the tea caddy shake and said, "Tea caddy, tea caddy, why do you shake?" "Well," said the tea caddy, "the flea and the louse were shaking their sheets. The flea, she fell, and she fell in the fire, and the louse, she weeps, she cries. The pot stirs, and I shake." "In that case," said the bag of pegs, "in that case, I will jump." And the bag of pegs, it jumped, and it jumped, and it jumped, and jumped, and jumped. The pegs jumped. The tea caddy, it shaked. The pot, it stirred. And the louse, she cried, she wept. Now, outside, in the field, were some sheep. And one of the sheep, she stuck her head in the window and she said, "Pegs, pegs, why do you jump up and down?" "Well," said the pegs, "well, the flea and the louse were shaking their sheets. The flea, she fell, and she fell in the fire, and the louse weeps. The pot stirs. The caddy, it shakes. And I jump." "In that case," said the sheep, "in that case, we will Bah! And all the sheep began to bah! And the pegs, they jumped. And the caddy, it shook. And the pot, it stirred. And the louse, she wept. Now, at the bottom of the field was the Boggy Lock. And the Boggy Lock, it heard all the sheep baaing, and it said, "Oh sheep, sheep, why are you being so noisy? Why do you keep baaing?" "Well," said the sheep, "well, the flea and the louse were shaking their sheets. The flea, she fell, and she fell in the fire, and the louse, she weeps. The pot, it stirs, and the caddy, it shakes, and the pegs, they jump, and so we all baa," said the sheep. "We all baa." "In that case," said the Boggy Lock, "in that case, I will swell." And so the water in the Boggy Lock, it began to swell, and down came the water from the Boggy Lock, and it went all over the field and into the house, and it covered the pot and the caddy and the pegs, and it washed all over the sheep. There was water everywhere, even in the fire. And so the fire went out, and out of the fire came hopping the wee little flea. Hop, hop, hop. And it looked around that little house with all the water, and with the pegs jumping, and the sheep maaing, and with the pot stirring, and the tea caddy shaking, and it was so loud and it was so messy that the flea said to the louse, "Let us go to our new little house." And so the flea and the louse, they did go to our new little house, and they lived there happily ever after. And that is the story of the flea and the louse and their little house. Thank you very much for listening and for joining in. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.